If you were charged with murdering your wife, would you plead guilty to getting rid of the body? Particularly a body that, from all we know, was dismembered using a hacksaw? That's what Brian Walshe did last week. And why, if you didn't kill her, would you dispose of her body in the first place? Brian Walshe went on trial for murder today, Monday, December 1, and he began to give his explanation. Before today, I thought his explanation was going to be a doozy, and now I can confirm it is a doozy. So ciao a tutti, and to all you proffers out there, hello, hello, hello. I'm really glad to see you here. And I'm Prof Jo, a law professor, and this is Prof Jo Explains. I think some of you know, maybe many of you know, maybe all of you know, that the evidence against Brian Walshe is pretty substantial. I would say maybe overwhelming, and including, Google searches for things like, how do you dispose of a body, and what do you do if a body smells, and let me think of the others. 5 ways to dispose of a body you really need to. Is it better to throw away crime scene clothes or wash them? How long before a body starts to smell? And on and on and on. There are also pictures of him disposing of big trash bags, and the police were able to recover some of them. And in one of them, they found the clothes that Brian Walshe, in an earlier interview before he changed his story, said that Anna was wearing on New Year's Eve. As well as a hacksaw and I think a hatchet. They found blood in the basement. They found a broken knife in the basement. They found information that maybe around December 27, that Brian Walshe had Googled and asked, what's the best state for a divorce for a man? And discovered in the response that Massachusetts was 3rd worst of the 50. And there was evidence, and it was talked about a little today at trial, that Brian Walshe knew that Anna was having an affair. And I'm just hitting the surface. There's more. So he was posed with how to handle all this evidence against him. Now, you or I, not that you or I would be in this situation at all. I'm positive about me, and I think I'm positive about you. Might have tried to plead it down by saying, I'll tell you where the body is, something to get away from murder one, but not Brian Walshe. He is going to try to explain all of that. And today he gave the explanation. The explanation is something called sudden unexplained death syndrome. And his story is that New Year's Eve, 1:30, when their friend leaves, they go to bed. And then for some reason, an hour later, he gets up and decides to go downstairs and clean up the kitchen. And he's down there an hour. And when he returns to the bedroom, Anna is in the bed and she's dead. Now, at this point, what does he do? Does he call 911? Does he call emergency? Does he call friends? Does he call family? Does he run out onto the street screaming? No, he does none of those things. What we're going to find out is what he does is he dismembers her body and then disposes of it somewhere. And evidently his explanation for why he did that, which is something that no one else, well, of course, I don't know anybody who would be out murdering wives either, but it's not something I can imagine anyone doing who hadn't actually done the murder first. But his explanation is he was panicked that he might be considered a suspect. Now, why would he consider himself the suspect? I understand that the two of them are the only adults in the house, so far as we know. But if she's died of natural causes, what would lead him to think that law enforcement or the medical examiner would decide that she was killed, that maybe it was poison or something? Why would he think that? In addition, he said that the evidence is that he and she were in a very happy relationship, and he's going to introduce some texts in which they appear to be thinking about their future together. So if that's the evidence that you're doing really well, that you're thinking about your future together, that you've got texts and emails from Anna saying that, then what in the world would lead you to believe you're going to be a suspect that needs you to do what he did? It's an extraordinary defense to me. And I do not believe it will succeed from a jury. I've heard some people, because when we broke, I listened to a couple of podcasts and listened to a couple of news stories. And I heard a couple of people think that maybe it will be a good defense because her body hasn't been found. But remember, he has to explain where her body is and why he hasn't disclosed it. And he hasn't done that either. So I think this is not a good start for him. And I'm going to stand by that until I hear something different. Today was openings, and we also heard from one law enforcement expert who was the lead investigator on the case. The openings, I thought the opening for the Commonwealth was really very good. He laid out the circumstances of Anna Walshe going missing on January 1. He did, I thought, a really good job of that. He also presented some of the evidence about the Google searches and what was on the Google searches, which I think must have gotten the jury's attention. Certainly, if I was on the jury, that would have gotten my attention big time. I thought he was, from what you can tell with, I'm here, I'm not in the courtroom, but from what you can tell, I thought his demeanor and interaction with the jury was probably fine. He's not going to be a warm, fuzzy prosecutor, but you don't have to be. And in fact, sometimes it's particularly on the prosecution side, that kind of little bit of air of professionalism really works very well. And that's what I thought. Now, again, I wasn't there, and seeing it on a screen, you can't get the same sense of it. But I thought he interacted well with the jury. The defense lawyer seemed to me to be fine in front of the jury also. I had a little trouble, and I said this morning when we were watching the trial, I had a little trouble assessing his opening because I thought it was so silly. And given that, it was hard for me to step back and be able to evaluate it. To evaluate it in the way the jury would be receiving it. And of course, they're hearing it after they've heard a really pretty good opening from the Commonwealth. But I thought from what I could feel or think, given that the defense doesn't make sense to me, that he did a good job of doing it. My one criticism of him, and I also said this morning, was that he steered away from talking about the really ugly stuff that's going to come out with regard to what happened to Anna in the early morning hours of New Year's Day. And I really think he should have addressed it and given some explanation rather than just wait. Now, I see Gen X, other seventh power, is asking about the rosary beads. So if you don't mind, let me take that one now, and then I'll get back to, what I was saying. I don't think it's going to disrupt anything. I think you all, have a pretty good idea what was going on anyway. I don't know about the rosary beads. I hadn't seen them initially. And then there were people in the chat this morning that were talking about them. So then I paid attention. I'm not really visual that way. I'm focused on words and what people are saying, and things like, having rosary beads on your right hand, I can miss for a while. I'm not sure if I was in the courtroom, I would have missed it, but on the screen, certainly. And I don't even know what the impact on the jury will be. I mean, I think he's trying, obviously, to convey the fact that he's a religious person, God-fearing person, also worried about what's going to happen to him, and that's why he's got the rosary beads. Now, if you want to give him the benefit of the doubt, you may say he's really sincere about it. I'm not into giving benefit of the doubt very often when what I'm seeing defies or undercuts any doubt I might have. But if you were to give him the benefit of the doubt, maybe you'd see that. I don't know whether the jury is going to react that way. I mean, it's a tricky thing to do because maybe the jury will have sympathy for him because he seems to be religious and seems to be really, from what you can see, really distraught about it without facial expression, of course, or whether they're going to say this is a real hypocrite and he's trying to get our sympathy, and we see through him. If I were on the jury, I think I might be the latter. I don't know where you would be on it, but so it's tricky. Could the judge make him stop? Theoretically, I think it's possible because the defendant is not supposed to be doing things that might generate sympathy in the jury. But the Commonwealth has not objected so far as we can tell. And I don't know whether the judge has noticed or the judge is thinking if the Commonwealth doesn't say anything, neither will I. I did think I've never seen anybody hold rosary beads that way. And I was thinking about that later. If you're going to pray on rosary beads, you usually have two hands. I have never seen anyone just wrap them around a hand and hold on to them all day like a talisman. Now, maybe people have done it. I just have never seen it. And I think that also might hit the jury the wrong way. If people like me, and I will say I'm Catholic, so I've seen people, with rosary beads. I've held them. I've just never seen them used that way. And if there are jurors who have that sort of background or experience, they may also react the same way. So that's my best take on the rosary beads. It was unusual. And I agree with everybody who was chatting this morning. And I'm sorry I didn't have names. As I've said before, when the chat is going by and I'm trying to listen to what's being said and take notes about it, and I don't even see all the chat as it goes because it's going relatively quickly. But the ability to write down what's said and then write down who said it, I wish I were better at it. Maybe I'll get a little better at it, but I'm not sure I'm ever going to be really good at it. So the only thing I can do is kind of apologize for it and explain why I'm not, doing it as well as I might. So in any event, we got past the openings, and then comes the first Commonwealth witness, and that was the law enforcement officer who was in charge of the investigation, and his name was, I believe, Franklin, was it? I've got it here somewhere. And I mentioned this morning, there was a television show in the early 50s, maybe mid 50s. I never saw it, but it was iconic because for, into the 70s and the 80s, you would see comedy shows and others satirizing that show. It was Dragnet. And the lead police officer there was very stiff and very, I'm getting from here to there. I'm not going to divert. I'm not going to be casual. We're not going to have any small talk. I'm job oriented. And that's how that police officer this morning on the stand struck me. I don't think he displayed a sense of humor. Now it's a murder trial. He doesn't have to. I think his demeanor and his behavior probably worked okay with the jury, but it did make me think of the jokes about that television show because it was that sort of officer, What I didn't like, and I didn't like it in the first part of the trial today, and then as the day wore on, but I was trying to give benefit of the doubt because I thought, the Commonwealth knows its case better, obviously better than I do. They know what evidence they have. They know where, if there's a weakness in their presentation, they know where it is. They know how they want to work with the evidence. They know what they want to rely on in closing. And I don't know any of that. I'm just watching. But watching, it was deadly for me. It went on and on and on and on. And what I'm talking about is uh, Brian Walshe gave 4 interviews to law enforcement, and the Commonwealth played that first interview that he gave, or when he was interviewed by law enforcement, didn't edit it at all, didn't cut it down to the salient points. We just listened to this long, for me, interminable interview. And there were really important nuggets in it, clearly, but a lot of it was not. And I asked this morning, did any of you have any good ideas why? And there were people who had some pretty good ideas about what may have been happening. That the Commonwealth wanted to show how thorough the investigation was. The Commonwealth wanted to show how many times Brian Walshe lied, those sorts of things. And I agree that those are important things to convey to the jury. But you can have something that's pretty important and it's outweighed by the other side. And in this case, I thought this was outweighed by this. In fact, I thought it crushed. Not that the jury didn't hear it, but it was just too much. And then there was another interview, that was played, and we did the same thing. And I did think it was too much. I also thought, and this I'm willing to hold judgment on, the Commonwealth showed a lot of photographs of the house, and maybe he's going to connect all that, but there were photographs of the bathroom. There was photographs of a bedroom on I guess it was the second floor. There were 2 or 3 photographs of the kitchen. We looked at a dining room table. We looked at was it a credenza against the wall? And again, I kept asking myself, why? Now, again, he may be able to connect it up, but watching it today, I didn't have a very good notion of what he was doing and why he was doing it. So that was the other thing that really struck me today. There is a motion in limine, and a motion in limine is, well, let me back up. At trial, if the one side or the other, let's say it's the Commonwealth, wants to introduce evidence or ask a particular question, the defense can object. They may go sidebar to decide whether the evidence is admissible, and the judge will make a ruling yes or no. A motion in limine takes care of that ahead of the trial. So if I know that the Commonwealth plans to introduce particular evidence, I can make a motion in limine before trial so that we can get that hashed out before we get to trial. It has the advantage of alerting the judge in advance, and judges like that. I mean, they much prefer that you do it when they have time to think about it and reflect and maybe check some case law, to ask for more argument. At trial, they're reluctant to do it because every minute they're doing that, the jury is sitting in the jury room waiting. So judges like it when you do that ahead of time. They appreciate it. It also is very helpful because if you're the side that's introducing the evidence, in this case, that the motion that they were talking about was made by the Commonwealth, because I believe it was the Commonwealth, because you want to refer to your important evidence in opening. And if you don't know whether a particular piece of evidence will be introduced, will be admissible at trial, then you cannot refer to it in your opening statement, because what you're going to refer to in your opening statement has to be evidence that will actually be produced during the trial. Now, once in a while, there's a mistake about that, but you run a risk with the jury, because if the jury remembers you said you were going to do A, and we sat for this whole 2-week trial and never saw or heard about A, they're going to hold it against you, or they may hold it against you. So the other reason for the motion in limine is to find out whether it will be in or out, so you know whether you're going to be able to use it in your opening, and you know whether you're going to be introduce it later, so you can meld your case, knowing. So there was a motion in limine, and it relates to William Fastow. Now, William Fastow is a resident of Washington, D.C., and that's where Anna was living the last year and a half, couple of years. She was commuting from Washington back to Massachusetts to where her 3 sons and Brian Walshe were living. And she ended up having an affair with Brian Fastow. And there's some evidence, we do not know what it is, that the defense does not want introduced at trial, and it relates to something that Brian Fastow can testify about. There has not been a ruling about it. The Judge Frenier, asked both the prosecution and the defense, if I don't rule now, if I wait until we actually get to the point in the trial where this becomes important, where you want to now use the evidence, will you be disadvantaged? And the prosecutor said, I would have liked to, do it in opening, but he ultimately agreed that, his opening wouldn't be harmed in any salient way. And the defense said it was fine with them to wait. Now, Judge Frenier is waiting on it, in part, I think, because the evidence may relate to other evidence that may come in at the trial. And she wants to wait and see what the sort of the whole enchilada of the evidence is before she rules on this piece of evidence. So she's waiting on it. She did indicate that she thought she knew what she was going to do. She wanted to wait, and they're waiting. So we don't know what Brian Fastow might testify to that the defense doesn't want us to hear. But we do know that he is going to say some things, if the defense in its opening was accurate, that Brian Fastow will say some things that will help the defense about Anna loving and respecting Brian Walshe, about her not wanting him to know that she was having the affair, with the suggestion that she didn't want to hurt him. And I think he may even say something about she wasn't gung-ho about getting a divorce, and being with him. So we just don't know what else he might say, and we won't know until we get there. And we won't ever know, or at least not until the trial is over, if the judge rules that the evidence cannot come in. So that was something else that came out today. And another piece of this is what happened. So let me go back up now and fill in. I gave a sort of a skeletal outline of what's been happening. Let me fill it in a little. Brian Walshe, from what we can tell, was always a mover and manipulator. His father disinherited him and said, he doesn't have any judgment, and he's not, essentially, he may not be the most honest person in the world. And he was absolutely floored by it. In fact, I think he sued to try to overturn the will and didn't succeed. He then created this scheme where he was trying to sell counterfeit Andy Warhol paintings, and he got caught. He was doing it, I think, with someone he knew, or with someone who knew someone he knew. And the person, when he discovered that they were counterfeit, wanted his money back. And Brian Walshe was not fast about giving the money. He was reported to the federal authorities, and he was prosecuted. And he was convicted. And because of that, because of the conviction, he was not able to move with Anna Walshe to D.C. She had gotten an offer of a much better job. It was apparently twice, Brian Walshe said 3 times, the money she had been making, and the family, she was the sole breadwinner at this point. They had expected that she was going to he was going to move down with the boys to be with her. The federal criminal prosecution meant that he wasn't going to be able to get there. So I see a question now, and I don't know that if I didn't say this, I apologize for these questions. If you can put up 3 cues so that it's easier to spot. And I see one from at 13 Mandy now. Did you find it unprofessional that law enforcement was interviewing him with 3 children playing in the background? Very distracting. It was incredibly distracting. And it sounded as though the boys had the run of the house, because he never once that I heard told them to pipe down, to be quiet, to go in the playroom, to go in their bedrooms, did anything to interrupt what they were doing. And I was surprised that the law enforcement officers, when they were there, didn't ask him if they could go to another room or more quiet room. It may not have distracted them much, but it certainly was hard if you were trying to listen to that interview as we were this morning, because the sound on the interview, the audio, was not good to begin with in terms of hearing it. And then you had the children interrupting all the time, and it made it worse. So I agree completely that it was distracting. Unprofessional, I don't know whether I would characterize it that way, but distracting, I agree with you 1,000%. So here's at Taterbug with 5 7s. Is it 5 7s? Yeah. Do I think he will testify? Yes, I do. I think, generally speaking, it is not a good idea for defendants to testify. There has to be a particularly compelling reason why a defendant would get on the stand. And I think Brian Walshe, I don't know him, obviously. I have not heard him in, sort of everyday conversation. I heard him in the interviews this morning, but I didn't get a good feel for how well he could pivot. And in when you're being cross-examined, you better be really quick to respond to questions, to seem sincere to the jury, to be able, when you're lying in particular, to be able to see that if I answer this way, which I didn't expect the question, if I answer it this way, I'm going to get caught, because 3 questions down, I'm going to be trapped by something that I can't answer. So generally, you don't want a defendant on the stand, and I don't think he's going to be good at it. I could be wrong, but I don't think he's going to be good at it. But I do think he's going to testify, because this story about what happened, who is it going to come from if it doesn't come from him? There were only 2 adults in the house at the time. One of them, is dead and can't say anything. And if Brian Walshe is going to rely on that story, and we know he is, because the defense lawyer already referred to it, and remember, he should not be able in opening to talk about something that isn't going to come in the evidence. So if he does that story and there's no evidence that ever comes in, the defense will be in a really bad place with the jury. And the judge won't be happy either, by the way. So I think he's going to have to testify. Now, we'll see. But I just can't imagine how else that story, that he found her in bed dead, and it was sudden unexplained death syndrome. There's no body, so there can't be an autopsy that's going to confirm it. He was the only one there. The oldest of the 3 children was 6. He's certainly not going to be able to confirm it. So I really think Brian Walshe will have to testify. Question, if he testifies, this is from at 13 Mandy or 13 Mandy. If he testifies, will the state make him describe in detail how he dismembered her and where he disposed of her? The first part, that the government will certainly try its best to make him describe in detail, because it certainly advances their case. I mean, it doesn't advance the facts, but it certainly advances their case in giving the jury a picture of what this guy is like. So certainly they're going to do that. Where he disposed of the body, I'm sure there's going to be an objection to it. My guess is that the judge will allow it in. The jury is going to have that question anyway, but you can have evidence that's admissible under the evidence rules generally, but the prejudicial effect of the jury hearing it is so substantial that a judge may say the prejudicial effect just outweighs too much. And even though it's admissible under the rules, we're not going to allow it in. And that may be some of what goes on here. So I think on the dismemberment and what he did, they're going to be able to ask some questions, maybe not as many as they would like. On where the body is, I think it's a legitimate question for the Commonwealth to ask. What did he do with the body? And it seems to me to be legitimate for the Commonwealth to ask, or make the point through either Brian Walshe or some other way that we're never going to know. We can't ever confirm his story because the body isn't there. And why would the body not be there if his story could be confirmed? There was a discussion this morning about consciousness of guilt and whether the judge was going to instruct on consciousness of guilt. And consciousness of guilt means you do some things that indicate that you're guilty. In the Adelson trials, Donna trying to flee to Vietnam on a one-way ticket, and trying to hide the fact that she was going and trying to get a quick visa and researching so she could go to a non-extradition country that doesn't have a treaty with the United States to send somebody back, is an example of consciousness of guilt. Why would anybody go through all of that unless that person was guilty and wanted to run? So there doesn't appear that there will be an instruction on consciousness of guilt, but the Commonwealth will certainly be able to make arguments about it. Why would he do all this? And this is certainly a legitimate question. Why would he do all this if she died of natural causes? So I think some of that will get in. So now the question, is the jury aware of his guilty plea to the two charges? No, not yet. And if he doesn't take the stand, the jury may not formally ever know that unless the defendant puts it in evidence. And Brian Walshe may, because he can argue from that he pled to those two charges because he obviously did it and he was taking responsibility by pleading. And so he may then think that on balance, it would be better for the jury to know that than not know it and just know that he dismembered a body and he lied to the police, because certainly the Commonwealth is going to make the point that he lied and lied and lied in those interviews. So he may decide to do it. But again, if Brian Walshe doesn't take the stand, if he takes the stand, your prior convictions can be used to impeach, and presumably they would be able to get in that way. And I'm wondering whether, well, that'll take us off on a detour. I won't talk about it now, but maybe at another time. Okay. At 13, Mandy, does the Commonwealth have evidence of murder? 1, premeditation. All the planning seemed to occur after she was deceased. Well, and that is going to be an issue. But what the Commonwealth, and we don't know what else they have, even with the opening, we don't know everything they have. But what the Commonwealth has is, 1, she was having an affair. 2, they had this long distance marriage back and forth. 3, there will be evidence, I believe, that will come in that at least his mother had hired a private detective to find out whether she was cheating on him. 4, there's evidence that he knew that she was cheating on him. That likely will come in some form or another. 5, he checked to see whether Massachusetts would be a good place to get a divorce. All that's happening ahead of time. So that, combined with the story that you would have to believe that she died of natural causes and then he had a brain fit and decided that he would, dismember her and dispose of her body and, get rid of all the clothes and all of that. All that together, certainly I think could show premeditation and deliberation. Premeditation doesn't have to be, you have to do it for 2 days or 24 hours or, whatever. You have to have formed the intent to do it before you do it. And in some jurisdictions, it can be as little as maybe 2 to 5 seconds. Usually it's a little more than that. But the Commonwealth may have more trouble with, if in fact there's a jury instruction on it, is the claim that you can't prove that it was premeditated murder. You may be able to prove that he killed her, but maybe it was just manslaughter. They were in a violent argument and then she died. But Brian Walshe's problem with that is he's saying it didn't happen. His defense is not, you can't prove murder here. I admit I did something, but it wasn't murder. It wasn't intentional. It was, we just got into this, this passionate argument. I hit her and she fell. I didn't intend that she was going to die. And then I was just, crazed and didn't know what to do about it. And in fact, being crazed there, I don't think is particularly, it's a sensible solution to try to get rid of the body. But it certainly sounds more sensible than saying she died of natural causes in the bed and then I went and did all that. So so that's sort of my assessment of this as to where we are right now. I think tomorrow we're going to hit a point where we're going to hear about some of those Google searches, and it's too bad. We're never going to see the jury. They would never broadcast or stream so that you could identify or see the faces of the jury. But it's too bad we don't know somebody in the courtroom who can describe to us how they react to it. My guess will be they'll be very stone-faced. And when somebody is really stone-faced, that's sort of unnatural, and that would, signal something. So I want to, I said before on Prof Jo at Prof Jo Explains, we just got the channel up and running. I'll have a Patreon page maybe within a day or two. Patreon, I'm planning to do some exclusive things there, including maybe live meet and greets where we can actually talk and not you type and I'm running to see what the chat is before your comment disappears. And Q&As and other kinds of things that I've been toying with. And the nice thing about Patreon is there are no ads. And I don't know about you, but I hate ads. And there used to be a time when you could fast forward through ads, and now a lot of these, TV and others have gotten wise to it. So if you try to fast forward, it won't work. So that's Patreon. If you've got questions, you can always get me at sprofjo@gmail.com. And we have a Facebook page that I think is now up and running, Prof Jo Explains, where you can reach me there. So I'm going to look to see if there are other questions. If I didn't get to your question, I hate to ask you to do this, but if you would redo it with the 3 Qs, I will try to get to it now. So here's one. Oh, it went by already. You see, I lost it. Can we reel back? Oh, here we go. This is 13 Mandy. Did I find his chipper demeanor bizarre during the law enforcement interview when he was claiming she was just missing? No concern from him at all. Yeah. And I think so did law enforcement and anybody who was trying to put forward a story that I don't know where she is, and I love her and we have a great relationship. She's the mother of my children, would not have acted that way. So Thank you. What made me decide to start my own YouTube channel? Some of you may know that for the past maybe year, maybe a little more, I've been appearing on some other channels, Surviving the Survivor, Judy Singh's, you know, Asian American Legal Focus. She's the YouTube lawyer. Uh, and on Allison Galvani's My Father's Alibi, among others. And I have really enjoyed doing it. I enjoy sort of talking about the law. I really enjoy explaining the law to people who have an interest in it or explaining what's going on at trials. And I'm sorry, my little mic icon, the cursor keeps jumping over to it for reasons of I cannot explain, and I try to keep an eye on it, but I don't always catch it. So for whoever put that up and told me about it, thank you so much. So and my career by and large was teaching law students. I've taught practicing lawyers. I've taught judges. So it sits in my wheelhouse to be doing this. And I've had a lot of fun. I've learned a lot from all of you who have been in chats and have been asking questions. And it's always helpful to get questions because it, pushes me to think about things that on my own I might not have thought about. So here's a question from how do I think his interview compares to Wendy's police interview? Well, uh, I don't know how to. They're very different. uh, as you all, for certainly never give up. Certainly knows Wendy's interview if she asked that question. Uh, Wendy was on the other side of this. He was chipper. She went up and down. She cried sometimes, and I didn't believe the tears. Uh, she uh, she was at times, would talk about, gee, the guy at the kid at the liquor store admired my blue eyes. I mean, she was just really all over the place. She was to me clearly not credible in that interview. Brian Walsh, it was a little hard for me to assess because it was only audio, so we didn't get to see his demeanor and how he acted and how he responded. But he was not credible in a different way because somebody earlier said he was so chipper and he was trying to ingratiate himself with law enforcement, whereas Wendy kept saying, I know I'm a suspect. I know I'm a suspect. I know I'm a suspect. She was looking for sympathy, not to ingratiate herself, but to sort of weasel her way into Detective Isom's uh, picture of her in a positive way. Walsh was doing it in a different way. Okay, I get a question. 13 Mandy, am I a bowler? I noticed the signed bowling pin yesterday. No, I am completely uh, uh, spastic, would that be a good word? I did take bowling in college, and I could not run forward and have my arm go back. That was too much um, managing of body parts for me. So I'm not a bowler. But the bowling ball, I taught at the University of Nebraska College of Law, and we have now national championship volleyball team, but we have a national championship bowling team, and that was their signed bowling pin to me. I went with them to the national championship that year. And I'm not going to go on a digression here, but if anybody's interested in bowling, it was fascinating to learn how much there is to bowling. When you pull up the blanket on anything, when people are experts in it, there's so much under the blanket that one who is not an expert would never know about, never think about. And I found it just really fascinating. And I'll give you one thing. They oil the lane so that it advantages a left-handed or right-handed bowler. Now, you know, it sounds sensible now that I found that out, but I didn't know it at the time. Oh, isn't that nice? Stella Bella 310 said I'm a breath of fresh air. My family might not think so. I think they would have other descriptions of me that would be maybe a tad less kind than that. I will tell you a story, and I apologize for the digression. I will go back to these other questions, but I was at a wake with family members years ago now, and I don't know what I said at the wake. And one of my cousins said to me, when people die, we come to a wake and we say, well, at least she's at peace now. And she said, when you die, we're going to say at least we're at peace now. So breath of fresh air wouldn't come from their mouths, I don't think. Okay, Professor Jo is your favorite show, Jeopardy. I bet you're really good at it. You know something about everything. Yeah, a jack of all trades is a master of none. You're looking at her. I liked Jeopardy before. These days it's all trivia. There's nothing really, there are no substantive topics. And although I can do trivia, because I follow gossip, I don't like it as much. And I think what would stop me in Jeopardy is the little clicker thing. You've got to be fast and manually dexterous. I'm not. So I could answer the questions, but this part of it would be out of my range. Here's 13. Mandy, did you find his chipper demeanor? But we got that one. Okay. No concern from him at all. I answered that. So I'm not going to answer it again. Let's see. Any other questions? I may have missed this. Will the charges he pled guilty to come into this trial? Yeah, I did talk about it. And the quick answer is if he doesn't get on the stand, they may not. Unless he decides to do it for tactical reasons. Okay, question, what area did you practice in? In teaching, I had a chair in constitutional law, so I taught constitutional law, First Amendment, 14th Amendment, federal courts, the practice in the federal courts. I taught criminal law and criminal procedure. I taught sports law because I was at Nebraska. Nebraska's college sports are very big, and I had oversight of all of college athletics at Nebraska. There's always a tenured faculty member who's given that job, and I had that job. One of the reasons why I was with the Bulls. Right now, I'm following the Justin Baldoni, Blake Lively litigation, and in fact, at some point, I'm going to ask people whether they're interested in a trial like that. It's not a criminal trial, but boy, does it have a lot of emotion and a lot of strife and stress going on. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, I consider one not very bright and the other I'm not a psychologist. Let me see if I can find a word. Let's say a manipulator. The former Prince Andrew, who's now what? Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. So I follow that. You name it. If it's gossipy, you can get my attention. I'm not above gossip. Here's, now we're back to the case. Good. The defense claims sudden death and opening, but did they mention what Brian did rather than call 9/11? No, that's what they left out. They left out that whole area where they're going to have to at some point confront what he did when he decided the better part of wisdom was not calling emergency or calling law enforcement. The Commonwealth mentioned it, but he shied away from it. I don't think he's going to be able to continue to shy away from it unless he just wants, the jury to hear what the Commonwealth story is about, about that. Okay, here's another one. Oh, that's a compliment. I'm the best. Well, thank you very much. Uh, but other questions about what happened this morning or this afternoon, or about what we can expect coming up in the next, week or 2 weeks in this trial? I will say, and those of you who listened this morning and this afternoon will know that Judge Frenier, I think, is really terrific. She is very precise. She's prepared. She makes crisp rulings. She's clear as to what she's going to do and why. She protects the record like nobody's business. I mean, I watched her today with the jury, the instructions about don't read anything, don't talk about the case. She did it with them uh, before, to ask if they followed the ruling, her orders the day before, and she asked them to both say orally that they had and also to nod their head that they had, and she did it at the end of the day. So there's not going to be any question with regard to her vigilance with the jury. And when she does anything, she asks both the prosecution and the defense, do you have any objection to this? Do you have any comments you want to raise? I mean, she's doing, I think, so far a really great job. Okay. We've got another question from that are in. Where some of his Google searches were some of them about disposing a body done before the murder? I don't think any were. At least I'm not aware of any that were done before. They started coming in the morning of January 1. Okay, question. Why can't the jury know Brian tried to plead insanity? Because it's prejudicial to him. In a civil trial, if you try to settle the case, the jury doesn't know that was tried. The jury is only supposed to know what is relevant to the charges that are brought. And the fact that you tried to plead insanity has nothing to do with the charges that are brought. And I'm not sure whether it was insanity that he was trying to plead or not competent to stand trial. And those are two different things. Not competent to stand trial means, you just can't follow what's happening at the trial, and you have to be able to do that in order to have a fair trial. Insanity says at the time you did what you did, you either didn't know the difference between right and wrong, or you couldn't control your actions. So if someone here knows if he actually tried to enter an insanity plea, just put it up in the chat, because I don't know. And the other thing is, with an insanity plea, you just can't, raise it. You're going to have expert testimony to say that you suffer from a mental disease or defect. And it has to relate to then what you did. So, question, how long do I think the trial will go? And this is from how long do I think the trial will go? I don't know. I thought that Judge Frenier said 2 weeks, but then I saw something else where she had said 2 to 3 weeks. I'll be surprised if it goes that long, but I'm not a good predictor of this, because I'm never, you have to know how many witnesses each side has, and how they think the progress of the trial will go. But I guess I would be surprised if it's more than 2 weeks, but that's just, a top of my head guess. Okay, this is from, what is that? Me there something. I can't. Oh, me there's that. Thank you. Do I think there will be appeal issues regarding the issue discrepancy of the phone search, i.e., what his lawyer agreed to and that law enforcement got all the data versus only his communications between him and wife? If he's convicted, any issue that the defense made a motion about or objected at trial to is something that they may decide to appeal on. They'll just have to decide, what other appealable issues they think they have, and tactically whether it's a strong ground for appeal or not. But anytime The judge says no to the defense. You can put that down on a piece of paper. It could end up being an appealable issue. Okay. I'm right. He tried to okay, thank you. Thank you, Nadia nods, that he was trying to claim incompetence to stand trial and had not raised an insanity plea. Okay. And then Never Give Up 15 said she thinks Brian was in our state hospital undergoing psychological evaluations. That's true. I don't know what state hospital it was. What happened was he had been assaulted while he was in jail. I believe he was knifed and he was hospitalized. And from there, he was put, he was hospitalized in an institution for, mental evaluations and psychiatric treatment. Okay. Oh, there's a good question. Christian H20, H2O wants to know if Brian's mother will testify. I don't know. I haven't seen the witness list that the defense has in the case. Um, I haven't pulled that document. I haven't seen the witness list uh, from the defense side. Haven't pulled it yet, and so I can't answer with any certainty whether she's on their list. My guess is she might be, which doesn't mean she will testify. And she's got, remember, uh, he spent time with her on one of the days he was driving around throwing out trash bags. And he said that she had, I think it was cataract surgery, and he had been to visit her. So she's got maybe that information, although whether that's needed now since he's admitting that he was throwing the trash bags around and they had evidence in them, it may not be that they need her for that. But the state may want to call her or the defense with regard to the private detective, that the investigator who was hired to see if Anna Walshe was cheating on Brian. And she may want to tell, if she testifies, she's going to say that Brian didn't know that she had hired the investigator. So that might be helpful to the defense. And if so, we might see her on the stand. Question, who is taking care of his children now? I tried to look into that. Her mother is in Serbia and had been trying to get custody of the children after Anna went missing. And apparently there were issues in terms of the children leaving the country. And so they were in the custody of the Commonwealth. I don't know whether there's local family that they're with now. And I actually don't know whether in the last few weeks their grandmother has been able to get custody. I am guessing maybe not because Brian hasn't been convicted. And so I don't know that sort of arrangement, letting children leave the country, would be available. But that's civil law, and it would be civil law in Massachusetts that would answer that. Question, how many years may Brian get for the guilty charges he confessed to? I think one of them is up to 10 years. So it's nothing like a murder one conviction. So, okay. Anything else? I said I would do this for a half hour. I don't want to keep people who have other things to do on. Let's take just a couple more. This is an issue with this mic we're going to have to get figured out. I don't know the answer to it. In some jurisdictions, if murder is charged, murder one is charged, automatically the lesser includeds are charged. Lesser includeds are, in order to convict of murder one, you necessarily committed murder two, because murder one is exactly like murder two, except it has an extra element. So murder one would be A, B, C, D. Murder two is A, B, C. Manslaughter may be A, B. So you can't commit murder one without having done the things that would constitute the lessers. And so some jurisdictions say they all go in, because the jury then, if it doesn't think you got to D in A, B, C, D, can then go to murder two, A, B, C. Some jurisdictions, you just charge the murder one, but at the time you submit to the jury, you can add the lessers. And on occasion, there's a jurisdiction that says the defense wants to go with murder one and nothing else. Then it's a sort of, you pay your money and you take your chances. There was a case in Massachusetts many years ago now with I think she was an au pair, and her defense lawyers thought there wasn't going to be enough evidence to convict her of murder one. They only wanted murder one to go to the jury. The Commonwealth argued about it and said, we want the lessers to go. The trial judge said no, if all she wants is murder one, that's what happens. And then to the surprise, the big surprise of the defense lawyers, and really the surprise of most trial watchers, the jury convicted her of murder one. At that point, she then appealed, saying the lesser should have been charged. And usually you don't get two bites of the apple that way, but the Massachusetts Supreme Court reversed the conviction and allowed it to be retried on the lessers. And I don't know whether that's still the law or the way Massachusetts does it, because it was very controversial at the time about what happened in this case. And so, as I said, jurisdictions differ on this. They also differ as to whether the defense can control. So if the defense says, I don't want them charged, does that end it? Or can the prosecution say, we do want them charged? And I think the best way to do it is if there's evidence that would support murder two, and there would be a question as to whether you could get murder one, that both should be charged. And that's generally what they look at. You can't get a lesser charged if you cannot show that there's a way that the jury could find the lesser, if that's clear. So there's got to be something that shows you might not be murder one, but it could be murder two, or might not be murder two, but it could be manslaughter. And I hope that if they get to it, that the lessers will go to the jury rather than an up or down on murder one, unless both the Commonwealth and the defense agree that they only want one charge to go to the jury. It's boy, you're really rolling the dice when you do that. So Indigo Doll wants to know, is Brian an only child? I don't know. I'm guessing not, but I don't know. Does anybody in the chat know that? Okay. And we had that question about, does the jury know about his two guilty pleas? No, they don't know right now, and they may not know. Am I following Alan Jackson? I lost that. I'm not following, but I can answer that without seeing the rest of it. I'm not following Alan Jackson trial here in California. I'm not following it, so I can't answer it, Shanta. So, okay, why don't we now say call time, and thank you for joining. I hope that I was able to, I hope my sum up of the trial today was adequate, and I certainly hope that any questions that I answered were to your satisfaction, that I did, an adequate job. If not, catch me on ask Prof Jo at gmail.com, or on Prof Jo Explains, the Facebook page, or, raise it again tomorrow if you're going to be able to be on the raise it again tomorrow if you're going to be watching the trial tomorrow. I'll probably come on and do a summary tomorrow night also. I think Joel Waldman from Surviving the Survivor is going to do a show, and I think I'm going to be on that. So I'll try to get any questions answered there. So thanks a lot. Thanks, proffers, for being here. I'm really glad that I'm doing this. I hope that you find it helpful. And I'm going to say now, ciao a tutti. So long.